The first day at a new school. The hallways buzzed with a chaotic energy, students laughing, shouting, and rushing to their next class. The air was a strange mix of disinfectant, mystery cafeteria food, and the nervous sweat of kids trying to figure out their schedules. And then there was Jordan Williams. He was the new kid, having just moved to the city with his family. He walked with a calm confidence that you just don't see in most teenagers. With his backpack slung over one shoulder, his shoes clicked softly on the polished floor as he navigated the crowded corridors. You see, Jordan had always been a little different. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he had a presence. People noticed him, even if they couldn't put their finger on why. What they didn't know was that he'd been training in martial arts since he was a little kid. It had taught him more than just how to fight. It taught him discipline, patience, and a deep sense of self-control. But on this first day, he was just another quiet new kid looking for his place. As he walked, his eyes scanned everything, the faces, the lockers, the posters for school clubs. He was mapping out his new world. That's when a group of kids huddled by the lockers started whispering and pointing. You know the type. The school bullies, who thought being loud and mean was the same as being strong. They saw Jordan's calm, polite demeanor and immediately pegged him as soft, an easy target for their next round of intimidation. Jordan heard the whispers. He saw the looks. But he didn't react. He had learned long ago that feeding into provocation only makes things worse. So he kept walking, his posture straight, his head held high. He showed no fear, no hesitation. His gaze was steady, noting the locations of teachers, other students, and the clear path to his classroom. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. He was a picture of calm awareness. The bell shrieked, and the hallways flooded with students scrambling for their seats. Jordan found his homeroom, earning a few curious glances along the way. He offered a polite, small smile to a few people, his confidence an unspoken statement. Meanwhile, the bullies watched from a distance, smirking. They were sure his quietness was a weakness, a sign he was easy to push around. They completely missed the subtle clues. The straight back, the steady gaze, the fluid way he moved. They were blinded by their own arrogance. His first class was uneventful. He listened, took notes, and introduced himself politely when asked. A few classmates were impressed by how well-spoken and calm he was. But the bullies were already plotting. They just needed the right moment. At lunch, Jordan found an empty table by a window and started eating quietly. The bullies saw him sitting alone and grinned. This was it. This was their chance. They were so sure he'd be an easy mark once they made their move. But Jordan remained unbothered. He wasn't worried or anxious. His training had taught him the power of observation, of waiting for the right moment instead of reacting impulsively. Every glance around the cafeteria was intentional, gathering information about his new environment. By the end of the day, Jordan had made an impression without even trying. To some, his quiet confidence was intriguing. To the bullies, it was a challenge they were itching to accept. What nobody realized was that Jordan wasn't just some ordinary new kid. He was prepared for more than just mean words or a little shoving. He was ready for anything. As he walked home, a quiet tension hung in the air. The bullies were planning their next move, completely unaware that they were about to step into a situation they couldn't possibly handle. Jordan, on the other hand, walked with the steady confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was. Calm, aware, and ready for whatever came next. The next few days at school felt different for Jordan. The hallways were the same as they'd always been. Loud, crowded, a blur of chatter and slamming lockers. But the air around him had shifted. The bullies had taken notice of the new boy. They'd whisper to each other in corners, swapping smirks and those small, knowing glances. They decided he'd be their next target, convinced that his quiet demeanor was a sign of weakness. They had no idea who Jordan really was. It started small. One morning as he walked to class, a couple of them bumped into him, hard. "Watch where you're going, newbie," one of them sneered, laughing just loud enough for others to turn and look. Jordan barely flinched. He just straightened his back, kept his eyes locked forward, and completely ignored the jab. The bullies were waiting for a reaction, a snap, a mumbled apology, a flash of fear or irritation. anything to prove he was vulnerable, but Jordan gave them nothing. That silence, in a way, was more unnerving than any outburst could have been, though the bullies didn't realize it yet. Over the next few days, they ramped it up. In the cafeteria, someone accidentally spilled a drink right next to him. Another shoved his chair as he tried to sit down. In the hallways, the whispers became a constant shadow, mocking his clothes, his haircut, even the way he carried his backpack. Every single act was calculated to get a reaction, to humiliate him in front of everyone. And through it all, Jordan remained perfectly composed. His face was a calm mask, his movements deliberate and steady. He had learned a long time ago that the first rule of any confrontation is to stay in control. Reacting with anger or fear just hands the aggressor all the power. Other students watched from the sidelines, nervous. Some of them admired Jordan's cool-headedness, while others were scared of what might happen if the bullies pushed him too far. You could feel the tension in the air, this unspoken feeling that something big was about to happen, but no one could guess what it would be. Even the teachers started to notice the bullies' behavior, but in a school that crowded, it's tough to police every hallway and every single interaction. One afternoon, they finally cornered him by the lockers, thinking they had him alone. "Hey, quiet kid. Think you can just walk around here like you're invisible?" One of them taunted. His friends snickered, nudging him on, confident their little intimidation game was about to pay off. Jordan just looked at them, his expression completely unreadable, but his eyes, calm and steady, held a quiet intensity that none of them recognized. It was a silent warning, but it went completely unnoticed because all they saw was another scared, quiet kid. They pushed him lightly, trying to trip him or knock the books out of his hands. Jordan didn't fight back physically, not yet. Instead, he moved with a subtle precision, sidestepping their shoves without a flicker of fear. To anyone watching, it might have looked like luck, but it was pure training and awareness. Every step, every tiny movement was calculated to maintain control and signal, without a single word, that he was not an easy target. Word of their failed attempts spread like wildfire. Kids whispered in classrooms about the new boy, who didn't react, the one who refused to be humiliated. Some admired his composure, others wondered if he was hiding something. Jordan's silence only added to the mystery, but for the bullies it was just frustrating. They were used to people flinching, cowering, or showing fear. Jordan's refusal to play their game was driving them crazy. By the end of the week, the tension was at its peak. The bullies were impatient, convinced they just hadn't pushed him far enough. So they planned their next move, plotting to corner him after school, far away from any teachers. What they didn't realize was that their own arrogance had blinded them. Every shove, every taunt, every attempt to break him had been observed, measured, and filed away in his mind. He was quietly preparing, calculating the exact moment when he would need to act. Jordan's calmness had been his shield, but he knew that even patience has its limits. Their relentless campaign was building toward a breaking point, one that would soon reveal a side of him nobody, especially not the bullies, ever expected. As the final bell rang, Jordan walked slowly down the hall, watching them from a distance. He didn't rush. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly what they are capable of, and when the right moment will come to show it. The day ended like any other on the surface, but underneath, the air was thick with a final, charged anticipation. The day had finally arrived. The day the bullies thought they could push Jordan too far. After school, the hallways began to empty, leaving only the faint echoes of slamming lockers and distant footsteps. Jordan knew this moment was coming. He'd seen the way they'd been plotting all week, their arrogance growing with each failed attempt to provoke him, but they didn't know he was ready. They didn't know he had been quietly preparing himself, not with anger but with control, precision, and a whole lot of patience. They cornered him near the side exit, a narrow corridor where no teacher could see. "Hey, quiet kid," one of them sneered, stepping forward with a shove. His friends circled behind him, smirking, absolutely confident that this time Jordan wouldn't be able to stay calm. They expected what they always got: fear, hesitation, maybe even a few tears. But Jordan didn't even flinch. He planted his feet firmly, his gaze steady, his body relaxed but coiled, ready. "Leave me alone," Jordan said softly. His voice was almost too calm for the situation. It didn't carry fear or aggression, just a quiet, firm warning. That voice, so steady and unshaken, unsettled the bullies more than any threat ever could have. They laughed nervously, mistaking his calmness for weakness. "Or what?" the ringleader challenged, stepping closer, trying to use his size to intimidate him. But Jordan didn't answer with words. He moved. He moved with the kind of fluid precision that only comes from hours of training. In one swift, controlled motion, he sidestepped the next shove, using the attacker's own momentum to push him back. Lightly, but firmly. He repositioned himself instantly, making it impossible for the others to get a clear shot at him. Every movement was measured, deliberate, and powerful, showing incredible skill without a hint of cruelty. The bullies froze. Their cocky smirks vanished, replaced by sheer confusion. They never expected him to be this fast, this strong, or this strategic. Their arrogance had completely blinded them to the possibility that the quiet new kid was actually a trained fighter, someone who had learned to stay calm under pressure and strike only when absolutely necessary. Jordan didn't attack recklessly. He defended himself in a way that left them shocked, off balance, and completely exposed. "What the?" one of them muttered, trying to regain his composure, but it was already too late. Jordan's awareness, his control, and his skill made it impossible for them to even think about pushing him again. The tables had completely and utterly turned. The few students who were watching from a distance gasped. They were finally realizing that the boy who had seemed so timid and polite all week was far more capable than anyone had ever imagined. In those few tense minutes, Jordan delivered a clear message without shouting or boasting. He would not be bullied, and he would not be underestimated. The bullies, humiliated and stunned, stumbled backward, unsure whether to flee or try again. Their arrogance had cost them their credibility, and the silent awe from the onlookers only made their embarrassment worse. By the time the confrontation ended, Jordan had regained complete control of the situation without harming anyone unnecessarily. He hadn't fought for revenge. He had defended himself with precision, teaching the bullies a lesson they would never forget. That afternoon, Jordan walked away from the hallway slowly, his steps measured, his head held high. The bullies retreated, no longer laughing or sneering, their confidence shattered. Other students watched him go, their faces filled with admiration and quiet surprise. In that single moment, Jordan became more than just a new student. He became a symbol of strength, courage, and intelligence. The confrontation had done more than just stop the bullying. It had shifted the entire balance of respect in the school. Everyone now knew that appearances can be deceiving, and underestimating someone can have consequences far greater than you could ever imagine. Jordan's quiet patience, combined with his skill and awareness, had turned the day into a powerful lesson, one the bullies and the entire student body would remember for a very, very long time. After the confrontation, the school felt different. The once busy hallways seemed quieter, as if everyone, students and teachers alike, had absorbed the lesson of what had just happened. Jordan walked calmly to his next class, his head held high, his steps measured. There was no arrogance in his movements, no need to boast or gloat. The bullies, once loud and confident, now slunk through the corridors, their whispers replaced with nervous glances, unsure of how to recover from the humiliation they had earned. Word of Jordan's actions spread quickly. Students who had witnessed the confrontation told their friends in hushed, awed voices about how the quiet new boy had completely turned the tables. There was admiration in their tone, but also a sense of disbelief. The boy they had thought was weak, quiet, and an easy target had shown a level of strength, intelligence, and control that no one expected. Even teachers who hadn't seen the full encounter noticed the sudden shift in the bully's behavior. A quietness where there had been arrogance, and respect where there had been complete disregard. It was a subtle but powerful change that rippled through the school. But Jordan didn't stop there. He understood that true strength wasn't just about defending himself in one moment. It was about creating a lasting culture of respect. Over the following days, he made a point to treat his peers politely. He offered help where he could, spoke kindly, and showed everyone that real power could be wielded with dignity. He didn't seek revenge or put anyone down. Instead, he simply set an example. His actions became a silent lesson for everyone around him, bullies and students alike. That respect is earned through character, not through fear. It's not about who's the loudest, but who has the strongest integrity. The bullies, meanwhile, were left to reflect on what they'd done. The social power they thought they had was built on a fragile foundation, and it had crumbled. Some tried to offer awkward apologies. Others just avoided conflict altogether. But all of them learned a valuable lesson. Appearances can be incredibly deceiving, and underestimating someone can have consequences far beyond what you imagine. They realized that arrogance and cruelty might give a temporary thrill, but true respect and genuine strength command lasting influence. They had chased a fleeting sense of power, only to find themselves powerless when faced with real character. By the end of the week, the school had subtly transformed. The hallways felt safer. You could see students being more mindful of how they treated each other. And Jordan, though he was still quiet, had earned a presence that could not be ignored. He became an unspoken symbol of courage, patience, and self-respect. His story didn't just end with that one confrontation. It became a lasting lesson for the entire school community. It showed everyone that true strength isn't loud or aggressive. It's thoughtful, it's controlled, and it's principled. Jordan's calmness, his intelligence, and his courage proved that anyone, no matter how quiet or unassuming they may seem, can stand up to intimidation and make a real, lasting impact. The bullies learned a hard lesson, and the students witnessed the incredible power of self-respect and resilience. That chapter of the school's life closed with a quiet understanding. Respect can be demanded, but it can always be earned. And courage isn't measured by how much noise you make, but by your ability to face challenges with intelligence and integrity. Jordan, the new boy who seemed so ordinary at first, had become extraordinary. Not through boastful strength, but through a quiet, undeniable courage that left a mark on everyone around him.